Carved into the silent cliffs of Maharashtra, there exists a structure that should not be possible, yet it stands untouched by time, defying every law of ancient engineering. Imagine standing before a mountain that has been carved from the top down, sliced like a sculpture freed from the earth itself. The pillars are impossibly smooth, the halls echo with forgotten footsteps, and the sheer scale makes you question whether human hands alone could have shaped it. These are the Ellora Caves, an ancient masterpiece so sophisticated that even modern architects pause in disbelief. And yet, despite its grandeur, Ellora hides a deeper mystery. Why, in recent years, have global powers, scholars, and even governments started circling around this silent stone complex? Why does a site carved over 1,000 years ago suddenly matter so much today? As lasers, satellites, and international research teams descend upon Ellora, whispers grow louder. What secret lies here that the world seems desperate to claim to understand the roots of this fascination? We must journey back to a time when entire mountains were shaped into temples without a single blueprint, when artisans worked with such precision that their methods still challenge our technology. Located in Maharashtra, India, the Ellora Caves stretch across more than 2 kilometers and contain Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain monuments side by side, a coexistence carved directly into stone. Created between the 6th and 10th centuries, they represent one of the greatest engineering achievements on Earth. Yet despite the scale and sophistication, the people who built Ellora left almost no written records, no instructions, no signatures. Every chamber only raises more questions. How long did it take? What tools were used? Where did the knowledge come from? And why did it disappear? As we explore this site, we will uncover not only the mysteries of its construction, but also the modern rivalry surrounding it. Nations with cultural ties to Buddhism, academic institutions racing for discoveries, governments funding new excavations, and debates over historical ownership have all turned Ellora into a point of unexpected tension. But before we reach the politics, we must first understand the marvel itself, because only by studying its stone corridors, its impossible geometry, and its silent brilliance can we understand why the world wants a piece of it. And so, in this journey, we step into a place where history, engineering, faith, and power collide, a place where the past refuses to stay quiet, even as time tries to bury its secrets. From a distance, the basalt cliffs of Ellora look like any other rugged mountainscape of western India, silent, weathered, timeless. But as you draw closer, a strange feeling settles in. The rock face isn't merely natural, it's been shaped, smoothed, hollowed, entire. Sections of the mountain have been carved away as if some unseen hand peeled back layer after layer of stone to reveal a hidden world within. You walk toward the entrance, and the air changes cooler, heavier, echoing with the soft hum of ancient emptiness. This is not just a historical site. This is a mountain that seems to breathe. Ellora is more than a collection of caves, it is an open-air library of human ambition. The first thing that strikes you is not the size of the structures, but the absence of chaos. Everything here is meticulously arranged. Pillars align with mathematical precision. Prayer halls expand into perfect squares. Carved stairways spiral seamlessly into multi-storied spaces. And then comes the moment of disbelief, realizing that this entire complex wasn't built by adding stone, it was built by removing it. Every column you see, every ceiling, every sculpture was not assembled. It was uncovered. Take Cave 16, the iconic Kalasa temple. It appears like a freestanding, monolithic structure, but the truth is far more astonishing. The builders started at the top of the mountain and carved downward. Imagine that for a moment. One wrong cut, one miscalculation, and centuries of labor could collapse into dust. Yet every proportion is flawless. The angles are sharp, the walls aligned, the sculptures expressive. Modern architects often say this kind of precision, achieved vertically from above, is nearly impossible without advanced surveying equipment. But the artisans of Ellora accomplished it with iron chisels, hammers, and an intuition for stone that has been lost to time. As you walk deeper inside the caves, you feel an almost unsettling silence, not the silence of emptiness, but of purpose. You can sense the rhythm of chisels that once echoed through these halls. You can imagine hundreds of artisans working in synchronized harmony, guided by a vision handed down through generations. But then you confront the biggest mystery. There is no record of these workers, no inscriptions naming architects, no royal documents describing the planning, no blueprints. A marvel of this scale rises out of the earth, yet history leaves barely a whisper of how it came to be. Standing inside the great hall of Cave 10, the carpenters' cave, you look up at the ribbed ceiling that resembles the interior of a grand wooden ship. It's easy to forget this isn't wood at all, it's stone, carved to imitate timber. The precision reveals a connection between ancient Indian architecture and early shipbuilding, techniques hinting at a cross-pollination of crafts. But again, there is no written explanation. Just the artifact itself, leaving you to wonder how many more architectural traditions were encoded into Ellora's stone before being lost forever. Every cave tells a different story. Buddhist halls of meditation with serene stone Buddhas seated in eternal calm. Hindu sanctuaries filled with dynamic sculptures of gods in motion. Jain shrines reflecting geometric perfection and ascetic discipline. 3 religions, 3 philosophies coexisting side by side in a single mountain. Nowhere else in the world is such harmony carved so literally into stone. You take a slow breath. The mountain feels alive, as if aware of your presence. You touch a pillar, expecting cold stone, but what you feel is something closer to memory, rough, ancient, softened by centuries of hands before yours. The artisans may be forgotten by history, but their fingerprints remain in every corner, every curve, every groove. And as you step back out into the sunlight, you realize something. Ellora isn't a ruin, it is a survivor. A voice from the past that still speaks even if the world has forgotten how to listen. To understand Ellora, you must first understand the stone it's carved from. Basalt, hard, unforgiving, resistant to erosion. A material that challenges even modern cutting tools. Yet more than 1,000 years ago, artisans not only cut through it, they shaped it with a precision almost mechanical in nature. The question that echoes through every corridor is simple. How imagine the builders standing at the peak of the mountain. Sunlight blazing overhead, dust swirling as the first chisel strikes the rock. They had no cranes, no dynamite, no electrical tools. They relied entirely on iron chisels, hammers, levers, and relentless patience. Instead of carving outward from a flat surface like traditional builders, they carved downward, peeling away layers of stone, attempting to reveal a temple hidden inside the mountain. Before any sculpting could happen, they needed a flawless architectural blueprint in their minds. Because once you carve downward, there is no undoing a mistake. A single crack could ruin the structure. The Kailasa Temple, the crown jewel of Ellora, is the perfect example. It required removing an estimated 200,000 tons of rock. Not scattered randomly, but carved with intention, columns positioned symmetrically, reliefs sculpted on vertical walls that weren't even accessible until sections of stone were removed. Modern architects struggle to explain how alignment remained accurate without surveying instruments. Did the builders use water-level channels, dust lines, solar positions, or did they simply understand the mountain in a way we no longer do? Inside the caves, the surfaces shift dramatically, rough in some places, mirror smooth in others. This isn't random. It suggests stages of work. Rough cutting teams removed bulk stone, then fine carvers followed, adding texture and detail. But that also raises a strange mystery. Why do no scars remain from scaffolding? There are no holes in the walls indicating temporary supports. How did they reach the high ceilings theories propose? Carved earthen ramps later removed, or carved steps gradually erased. But again, the mountain refuses to give us clear answers. One of the most intriguing details lies in the acoustic engineering. In certain Buddhist halls, even a whisper seems to reverberate endlessly. The pillars and domed ceilings aren't just decorative, they shape sound. Ancient texts from other regions describe monks using acoustics to enhance chanting, but Ellora contains no such records. Here, the evidence is exclusively physical, a perfect harmony of architecture and purpose. Walk into the Jain caves and the carvings shift from soft curves to immaculate geometry. Lotus ceilings bloom overhead with an almost mathematical precision. The surfaces feel less like they were carved and more like they were polished by centuries of dedication. The level of craftsmanship suggests specialized guilds of artisans, each trained in specific techniques, each passing trade secrets down the generations, secrets that may have vanished when political tides shifted, leaving no written trace. And then there is the stone dust. Excavations suggest that millions of cubic feet of debris were removed, yet the surrounding landscape holds no trace of where it was dumped. Some believe it may have been used for leveling land or building ancient roads. Others propose seasonal flooding washed it away. But the absence of clear evidence only deepens the enigma. As the sun shifts across the façade of Ellora, shadows move along the sculptures, revealing details invisible at other hours. This interplay hints that the builders may have planned carvings with sunlight in mind, using the environment itself as a tool. It's a reminder that ancient engineering often intertwined with nature and art modern design frequently forgets. Ellora is not simply carved stone. It is a dialogue between humans and a mountain, carried out over generations with techniques we can only guess at. The deeper you explore, the clearer it becomes, the real mystery is that Ellora was built. It's that the knowledge behind it vanished almost completely, leaving us with a masterpiece whose creation is as extraordinary as the structure itself. To trace the origins of Ellora, we must walk not through stone, but through time. Empires rose and fell, kings fought and forged alliances. Religions spread and intertwined, yet through all this turbulence, the mountain stood still. Historians attribute different sections of Ellora to different dynasties: the Kalachuris, the Chalukyas, the Rashtrakutas, the Yadavas. But here lies the great puzzle: none of these dynasties left detailed records of funding, planning, or supervising such a massive project. You might expect bragging inscriptions, monuments celebrating the rulers who commissioned the caves, poems praising the architects. Instead, Ellora is nearly silent about its makers. It is as if the builders wanted the mountain to speak for itself. The Rashtrakutas are the most credited, particularly for the Kailasa temple. Their rule marked one of the most artistically vibrant eras in Indian history. Yet inscriptions from their time barely mention Ellora, despite it being one of their most astonishing achievements. Why, some scholars suggest humility. Others think the temple's religious significance overshadowed political ambition. But a more intriguing theory is that Ellora's construction wasn't the work of a single dynasty at all. It was a centuries-long cultural project passed between kingdoms, each contributing without claiming ownership. Imagine generations of artisans working through political transitions, wars, droughts, prosperity. Imagine fathers training sons, who train their sons, with each generation adding new chambers, new sculptures, new visions. In this way, Ellora resembles a living document, an evolving reflection of shifting eras and beliefs. The Buddhist caves likely began earlier, between the 5th and 7th centuries, when Buddhism flourished under the patronage of the early Chalukyas. Later caves reveal Hindu iconography and architectural influences aligned with the Rashtrakutas, followed eventually by Jain temples marked by intricate detailing and philosophical austerity. What makes Ellora remarkable is not just the coexistence of three faiths, but the harmony between them. There are no signs of conflict, no damaged icons from religious rivalry. This was a time when India was not one country, but a collection of kingdoms, and yet craftsmen of different spiritual backgrounds carved their stories into the same mountain. It is a physical reminder that pluralism is not a modern invention. It has roots deep in history, etched into stone. Political stability played a role as well. The Deccan region's fertile trade routes connected India to Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and beyond. Wealth flowed in, fueling cultural projects, but eventually tides shifted. Power fragmented, dynasties fell, patronage dwindled. The knowledge systems behind Ellora, the guild networks, the apprenticeship chains, the engineering wisdom began to fade. When the Yadava dynasty collapsed under invasion, the last generation of artisans likely dispersed, their traditions lost or assimilated into new regions. What survived is the stone. The mountain held the memory. But the people who created it, kingdoms, guilds, families, became shadows in history. Walk through Ellora today, and you will feel traces of each dynasty layered like sediments, compacted into a single narrative. The halls are not merely artistic achievements. They are time capsules of India's political evolution. The absence of recorded history becomes part of the story itself. It forces us to listen more closely to what the stone is trying to say. In the end, Ellora's mystery isn't just architectural, it's historical. Not a secret erased by catastrophe, but forgotten gradually, quietly, as dynasties vanished and the world moved on. The mountain remained waiting for someone to remember. Walk into any cave at Ellora, and you'll feel the hands of artisans who lived more than a millennium ago. Every groove, every curve, every line is a signature left behind, yet there are no names, no diaries, no records of their training. The people who carved this mountain with unmatched skill are invisible in history. How can creators of such monumental beauty simply disappear? The answer begins with India's traditional guild system, highly specialized, close-knit communities of craftsmen who guarded their techniques carefully. These guilds passed secrets from master to apprentice orally, not through written manuals. Their knowledge was intimate, practical, experiential. This secrecy preserved uniqueness. But it also meant that if a guild dissolved through war, disease, migration, the knowledge dissolved with it. Imagine an artisan's daily life during Ellora's peak. He rises before dawn, approaches the mountain with a team, and begins work by listening to the stone. Experienced craftsmen understood basalt the way a musician understands instruments. A single tap told them where the rock was dense, where it was hollow, where it might crack. They knew how to coax stone into shape, not force it. Their skill wasn't just physical, it was intuitive, almost spiritual. Generations lived and died perfecting specific tasks. One group specialized in rough cutting, another in finishing, another in sculpture. Some artisans may have spent entire lifetimes carving nothing but lotus petals or repeating patterns. This level of specialization created extraordinary precision, but it also meant the loss of a single expert could halt a whole section of work. Historical transitions played a heavy role in the disappearance of these experts. When Buddhism declined in the Deccan, patronage for Buddhist cave building collapsed. When the Rashtrakutas fell, Hindu temple funding shifted elsewhere. When the Yadavas were overrun, remaining guilds scattered. Every shift pulled threads from a tapestry until eventually the whole fabric unraveled. There is also the question of migration. Some historians believe Ellora's artisans left the region after major political upheavals, possibly influencing architecture elsewhere, perhaps even contributing to stonework in regions like Karnataka or Rajasthan. Their knowledge didn't entirely vanish. It diffused. But it no longer existed in a form that could recreate Ellora. Then there's the absence of inscriptions. Ancient Indian artisans often preferred anonymity, dedicating work to the divine rather than themselves. Temples were offerings, not personal projects. The idea of signing one's work emerged much later. So the silence isn't mysterious, it's cultural. Yet this silence leaves modern historians searching through stone dust for clues. One of the few insights we have comes from unfinished caves. These abandoned chambers show rough outlines of pillars, half-carved walls, discarded tools. They freeze the artisans mid-stroke, revealing how they layered their work, how they organized teams, how they planned depth and symmetry. These caves are like pages from an incomplete instruction manual, offering a rare glance into the creator's process. But the most poignant aspect of the artisans' disappearance is this: they left behind a masterpiece intended to outlive them. And the mountain became their voice, echoing through centuries. The stone carries their intentions even if their names are lost. In the end, the artisans of Ellora didn't vanish. They became the mountain. Their legacy is carved into every chamber, silent, enduring, and profoundly human. Ellora spent centuries quietly resting in the Deccan hills, visited mostly by pilgrims, monks, and curious travelers. But in the last 100 years, something changed. The world began paying attention: scholars, architects, governments, museums, even geopolitical powers. Ellora transformed from an ancient site into a global fascination. It began innocently enough. Archaeologists from Europe in the 19th century documented Indian sites with newfound interest. Their notes on Ellora reflected both awe and confusion. How could such massive rock-cut architecture exist without written instruction? Early explorers assumed outside influence, speculating links to Greeks, Persians, Egyptians. These theories were later debunked, but the fascination only grew. The site challenged Western notions of ancient engineering and forced a rethinking of India's historical capabilities. In the 20th century, Japan and Southeast Asian countries developed a special interest in Ellora, particularly the Buddhist caves. Pilgrimage routes connecting India to Asia had existed for millennia, and rediscovering these routes became a cultural mission. Japanese scholars funded research, mapping Buddhist iconography, tracing stylistic evolution, and comparing it with early Japanese and Chinese cave temples. Ellora became part of a larger conversation about the spread of Buddhism across Asia. Then came UNESCO recognition in 1983, putting Ellora firmly on the world map. With heritage status came international funding, conservation projects, and increased tourism. But recognition also brought competition. Nations began debating historical interpretations, proposing alternative timelines, and seeking credit for cultural connections. Suddenly, Ellora wasn't just a monument, it was a symbol of heritage, identity, and global prestige. In the last few decades, geopolitical interest intensified. Countries with strong archaeological departments began dispatching teams equipped with laser scanners, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced imaging tools. Each group hoped to uncover new chambers, hidden passages, or inscriptions that could reshape historical narratives. The possibility of finding undiscovered sections created a quiet race, one not openly hostile, but undeniably competitive. Academia joined the fray as well. Universities worldwide viewed Ellora as a key to understanding ancient architecture, religious syncretism, and craft guild economics. New papers emerged yearly, proposing theories on construction, symbolism, and chronology. Conferences debated technical methods, dynastic patronage, and lost knowledge. Every discovery, even a minor tool mark, became headline-worthy. Tourism added another layer. With millions visiting annually, Ellora became an economic powerhouse. Local governments saw strategic value, while global tourism boards highlighted it as a must-see site. Preservation became a political issue. Debates erupted over restoration methods. Should damaged sculptures be repaired or left untouched? Should tourists be allowed deeper access or restricted to protect the site? Through all these layers, scholarly, political, economic, one truth became clear. Ellora was no longer just India's heritage. It belonged to the world. But with global admiration came global competition. Every nation, every institution wanted a narrative connecting them to the caves, a piece of the story to claim. Ellora had become more than stone. It had become power, cultural power, political influence, academic prestige. The world's growing obsession wasn't merely about admiration, it was about identity. And the deeper the world looked into Ellora, the more the mountain revealed and concealed. On the surface, international research at Ellora seems harmless: archaeologists mapping structures, historians comparing styles, anthropologists tracing religious exchange. But behind the academic language lies a quiet tug-of-war. Nations often seek more than knowledge. They seek ownership of narratives. Take the Buddhist caves. Countries like China, Japan, and South Korea have deep cultural ties to Buddhist art. Their scholars look to Ellora as a missing link in the transmission of style and doctrine across Asia. Discovering new evidence in these caves could strengthen historical connections, enriching cultural diplomacy. Funding research here isn't just academic, it's strategic. Western institutions have their own motivations. For decades, European archaeologists dominated the study of ancient cultures, shaping global narratives. Maintaining influence in South Asian archaeology helps preserve that authority. A groundbreaking discovery at Ellora, new inscriptions, unexpected chronologies, underground chambers, would be immensely valuable. Museums, universities, and research foundations all stand to gain prestige. India, naturally, is central. Ellora represents national pride, cultural heritage, and a symbol of historical continuity. The Indian government invests heavily in preservation, digital documentation, and tourism development. But with international teams hovering, India also feels the pressure to protect its narrative, ensuring credit for discoveries remains local. This sometimes leads to disagreements over excavation permits, export of materials, or data ownership. Academic rivalry adds fuel. When one research group proposes a bold theory, such as a new construction timeline or a previously unknown guild structure, others rush to challenge it. Conferences buzz with debates. Journals publish counter-arguments. Data becomes intellectual territory. And Ellora becomes the battlefield. Then there are economic factors. Tourism revenue depends on Ellora's global appeal. If a major discovery occurs, tourism spikes. Local governments know this. So do international travel industries. Each has a stake in maintaining Ellora's mystery and unveiling it gradually. Even religious organizations participate in the rivalry. Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain communities each connect deeply with their respective caves. Interpretations of iconography carry spiritual significance. Occasionally, debates arise over restoration decisions. Should a Buddhist idol be repainted? Should a damaged Hindu sculpture be replaced? Who gets to decide these questions blur the line between archaeology and faith. Most of this rivalry remains polite, hidden beneath scholarly courtesies. But occasionally it surfaces. Disagreements over methodology, protests against foreign interference, public claims that one nation's researchers are closer to solving the mystery than others. The mountain becomes a stage where global powers perform carefully, each wanting to appear respectful while subtly advancing its own interests. Yet amidst all this competition, there is collaboration too, joint research projects, shared datasets, combined conservation efforts. Because ultimately, Ellora's preservation benefits everyone? Rivalry may drive ambition, but cooperation ensures survival. Standing in the caves, you wouldn't sense any of this. The stone doesn't reveal the modern battles waged in its shadows. But behind every new laser scan, every published paper, every funding grant lies a quiet story, a story of nations vying for connection to a site that transcends borders. Ellora is no longer just a monument, it is a prize in a global intellectual contest. If you wander deep enough into Ellora, you will discover caves that feel different. Their walls are rough, pillars remain uncarved, ceilings abruptly end in jagged stone. These are the unfinished caves, frozen in time like abandoned sketches. They are Ellora's greatest clues and greatest mysteries. Each unfinished cave tells a fragment of a story. One may reveal the first stage of pillar carving, rough rectangles chiseled from the wall. Another might show outlines of deities that were never completed. Tool marks remain sharp, untouched by polish or sculpture. It's as if the artisans stepped out for lunch and never returned. Why were these caves abandoned? Some scholars argue that political upheavals halted work wars, invasions, shifting patronage. Others suggest structural instability, making further carving dangerous. A more subtle theory proposes that master carvers left or died, and their apprentices lacked the skill to complete complex sections. Without written instructions, the art lived only in minds and hands. Losing a master meant losing a lineage. But beyond the unfinished, there are hints of the hidden. Modern scanning technologies, LiDAR, GPR, 3D mapping have revealed anomalies behind certain walls, hollow spaces, layered rock patterns suggesting filled-in passages. These findings have sparked excitement and caution. Excavating hidden chambers risks destabilizing the caves, so research remains slow. But theories abound. Could there be lost shrines, storage areas, abandoned tunnels? The mountain keeps its secrets, offering only glimpses. Even the layout of Ellora raises questions. Why is the Kailasa temple placed where it is? Why do some caves have water channels leading to nowhere? Why are certain chambers aligned with solar patterns while others are not? Some believe Ellora might be only part of a larger complex now erased by erosion, earthquakes, or human settlement. Then there are the legends. Local folklore speaks of hidden tunnels stretching miles underground. Stories of monks who meditated in chambers so deep that no light could reach them. Myths of treasures buried within the mountain. While archaeology has not confirmed these tales, legends often sprout from forgotten truths. Many ancient Indian temples indeed had secret chambers for rituals, storage, or emergency escape. Ellora may be no exception. The most intriguing mystery, however, is the absence of inscriptions. Large projects usually celebrate patrons and architects, but Ellora's walls are nearly mute. A few scattered inscriptions exist, but none explain the construction. Some scholars interpret this as humility. Others believe the builders assumed the legacy would speak for itself. But another possibility is that inscriptions once existed painted, not carved and faded over centuries. Then we confront the chronology problem. Dating Ellora remains difficult. Carving styles overlap. Religious influences shift. Without inscriptions, scholars rely on architectural cues and associated artifacts. But new findings occasionally disrupt established timelines, forcing re-evaluations. Ellora is not complete, not fully mapped, not fully understood. It is a puzzle with missing pieces, many buried beneath centuries of sediment or hidden behind unexamined walls. The mountain seems to whisper that it has more to show if we are patient enough to listen. As we step out of the shadowed corridors and into the sunlight, Ellora seems timeless, unchanging. But its future is far from certain. The forces shaping its fate today are as powerful as those that shaped its past nature, politics, culture, and human curiosity. The greatest threat is erosion. Wind, rain, and temperature shifts slowly peel away the precision carved 1,000 years ago. Water seeps into cracks, expanding them. Vibrations from tourism and nearby cities weaken foundations. Conservationists race to stabilize pillars, treat surfaces, and prevent collapse. Every decision must balance preservation with authenticity. Too much reconstruction risks erasing history. Too little risks losing it entirely. Tourism, while economically essential, poses challenges. Millions visit Ellora each year. Foot traffic polishes floors, body heat increases humidity, and careless visitors sometimes scratch or touch carvings. Authorities restrict access to fragile chambers, but demand grows. The mountain must endure not just time, but the weight of admiration. Technology offers hope. High-resolution 3D scans preserve digital replicas of every corner, ensuring future generations can study Ellora even if parts deteriorate. Artificial intelligence helps reconstruct faded details. Conservation scientists analyze stone chemistry to design protective solutions. Slowly, the ancient and the modern form an unlikely alliance. Yet the future is not just technical, it is political. Heritage sites often become arenas for cultural pride, and Ellora sits at the crossroads of multiple traditions. Decisions about restoration, funding, and access must navigate religious sensitivities, national identity, and global expectations. But if managed with respect and foresight, Ellora can become a symbol of unity rather than division. The greatest challenge, however, lies in imagination. Will future generations see Ellora as a relic, a curiosity, a tourist attraction, or as a living testament to human creativity? The caves remind us that our ancestors were not primitive beings struggling against nature. They were visionaries who shaped mountains with chisels and dreams. And what of the unanswered questions? Perhaps future technologies will reveal hidden chambers. Perhaps lost inscriptions will be discovered. Or perhaps Ellora will guard some secrets forever, leaving room for wonder. As you take one last look at the mountain, the sunlight dances across its facades. The stone seems to glow not with mystery, but with memory. Ellora is not a monument to the past. It is a conversation between centuries. A reminder that human ambition, skill, and imagination can carve beauty even from the hardest rock. And above all, it is proof that some secrets are not meant to be solved completely. They exist to inspire. Here is a cinematic, emotionally powerful closing written in the same tone and style as the rest of your script. It ties all chapters together and leaves the audience with a lingering sense of wonder and significance. When you step away from Ellora, away from its cool shadows, towering pillars, and echoing chambers, the world feels different. The noise of modern life rushes back in, engines, chatter, the hum of time racing forward. But something inside you remains quiet, grounded, as if a part of the mountain followed you out. Because Ellora doesn't just show you history, it changes the way you feel history. As you look back at the cliffs from a distance, the details fade, but the presence remains. A presence built not with bricks or mortar, but with patience, faith, and a kind of collective genius that no single main can claim. Generations carved these chambers. Unknown artisans shaped these gods. Entire communities poured their devotion into a mountain, not for fame or glory, but because they believed beauty and belief deserved to be eternal. And that may be Ellora's greatest secret, not the hidden chambers, Not the unread inscriptions, not the vanished guilds, but the spirit behind its creation, a spirit that didn't seek credit, a spirit that didn't fear time, a spirit that understood that some works of art must belong to everyone because they speak to something universal within us. Today, nations may compete over Ellora. Scholars debate, tourists marvel, governments strategize, but the mountain remains indifferent. It survived dynasties, invasions, migrations, and centuries of silence. It will likely survive us too. And in its endurance lies a quiet message. Civilizations rise and fall, but what we create with devotion, what we carve with purpose, outlasts us all. So, as the sun sets behind the Deccan Hills and Ellora slips back into shadow, remember this: you have walked through the veins of a mountain. You have touched the echoes of hands long gone. You have looked into a past that refuses to disappear. And whether you leave with answers or more questions, you leave with something priceless: perspective. Because Ellora isn't just carved rock, it's carved time. A reminder that even in a world rushing forward, some mysteries are worth slowing down for. A reminder that beauty can survive 1,000 years of silence. A reminder that humanity, at its best, builds not for today, but for forever. And as you turn away and continue your own journey, the mountain remains behind you. Watching, waiting, and whispering through the ages, remember me.